Welcome to Nasdaq TradeTalks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq. Joining us for this segment, we have Sanjana Prabhakar, Product Development Specialist with Nasdaq Investment Intelligence, to discuss the International Buyback Achievers Index, which offers exposure to a differentiated portfolio of international equities that have affected a certain percentage reduction in shares outstanding. Sanjana, it's great to see you as always. Before we get to the performance metrics, give us a brief overview of the index.
Sure, Jill. So providing a very quick overview of the index. As you mentioned, it's called the International Buyback Achievers Index, ticker DRBXUS. This index has generated impressive double-digit returns of 16.2% in 2023, a year in which AI optimism largely favored big tech incumbents. So a few basics of the index construction, what stock buybacks are and how vital they've become in markets outside of the US. So when we think of buybacks, we think of instances where companies buy back a portion of their own shares. And buybacks essentially reduce shares outstanding, increasing EPS. And statistics illustrate quite powerfully how vital buybacks have become in markets outside the US. If you look at the UK and other markets, they have actually closed the gap with the US in terms of buyback activity in 2022. And if you look at 2022, it was actually a record year globally, with share buybacks jumping to an all-time high of $1.3 trillion. So this index that we have offers exposure to a portfolio of international equities that have affected a net reduction in shares outstanding of 5% or more. And half of the index constituents offer exposure to countries such as Canada, United Kingdom, and Japan, countries which are seeing a surge in buyback activity over the recent years.
Let's take a look at annual performance and a little bit longer with a 10-year look.
Sure. So this chart here shows the 10-year performance history of the index versus an international benchmark, ticker NQGXUST. So as you can see in the chart, the International Buyback Achievers Index, the total return version, has outperformed its competitor benchmark by an impressive 66 percentage points for the 10-year period, while displaying marginally higher volatility during the same period. So that's pretty impressive. It has consistently outperformed its benchmark by double digits since April 2015. And if you look carefully, you can see that the performance diverged quite markedly from that of its competitor in the years 2021 and 2023, with the index registering an outperformance in the range of 50 to 70 percentage points. And if you look at the year 2023, you see that the total return version of the index registered cumulative returns marginally lower than that of the benchmark, registering returns of 6.2% versus 16.7% for NQGX USD.
And let's talk about the weighting of the index in terms of where companies are domiciled and the sectors that are represented.
Sure. So as you can see here, we have three charts. One which shows the top 10 holdings of the index, the second which shows the country allocations, and the third that shows the industry allocations. And as you can see, the top 10 names of the index comprise nearly 40% of the total index weight and is tilted heavily towards financials and energy, with an index weight of 19.2 and 12.9% respectively. You also see representation from other sectors, including healthcare and basic materials, suggesting that there is significant diversification within the top 10 names. And if you look at the top 3 names, they include the likes of UBS Group, which is a large Swiss multinational investment bank with an index weight of nearly 6%, followed by Shell, which is the large multinational oil and gas company with an index weight of 5%, and Novartis, the multinational pharmaceutical company with an index weight of 5%. So these are very large established players with strong product portfolios and a very long track record of bringing to the market best-in-class products and services. And if you look at the country allocations, you see that the index is tilted heavily towards the United Kingdom with an index weight of 30%, followed by Japan and Canada. And as I mentioned earlier in the trade talks, we have been seeing an uptick in buyback activity in markets outside of the US, which explains the shift in allocations that we have seen. Between 2012 and 2022, we actually saw stock buybacks by the biggest UK UK listed companies more than triple from $22 billion to $70 billion. So that gives an indication for how vital buybacks have become in the United Kingdom. And if you look at the industry allocations, you see that it's tilted heavily towards financials, followed by energy and consumer discretionary. And there's been a change in the sectoral allocations over the last few years, with the financials now assuming a larger percentage of the index weight.
All right. And finally, let's take a look at your last chart here. We've got a lot going on in this one.
Yeah, so this chart here actually is quite interesting. It compares the performance of the International Buyback Achievers Index with other international benchmarks. And as you can see, the DRBX US Index has been a top 3 performer 7 out of 11 years for the period 2013 to 2023. So that's pretty impressive. We saw 2015 and 2017 being particularly favorable years, with the Buyback Achievers Index generating the highest overall returns. And while it doesn't figure in the top 3 in 2023, the Buyback Index registered impressive returns of 12.2%. So what these results suggest is that the index has consistently demonstrated above average performance versus other international Buyback Achievers indexes, and investors are likely to be encouraged by the strong returns over a long time period.
All right, Sanjana, appreciate the insight as always. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Market Reporter at Nasdaq.